My philosophy of life, why I'm a born optimist. All through my life, no matter what has happened, I have never discarded my optimism. Once during my many travels around the world, I was on a plane that had to make an emergency landing. Another E-fire broke out in the cabin of the plane during takeoff. Neither nor time did death even cross. My mind, and I guess that shows the extent of my optimism. I always think of critical situations as no more than a moment of danger, and that is the essence of my optimism. I suppose that, in a sense, business is a kind of bloody fight. The bigger the business, the more fights you have, and the more you have to pay. If someone in business falls into despair and pessimism in the process, that is the end of his or her development. One thing that distinguishes me from most other business people is that I have considerable experience in taking over failing firms and turning them around. These firms had been abandoned entirely by their owners, by the banks, and even by the government. Abandonment is pessimism in action. Again and again, I have turned chronic failures into profit-making enterprises in practically no time. This has drawn considerable attention from the international press. When asked about it, I always have an answer. When others start counting the impossibilities, I start counting the possibilities. At Daewoo, whenever I start any new kind of business, or start to trade with a new nation, a number of people worry. When I undertook a refrigerator plant project in the People's Republic of China, more people were against it than for it. The same thing happened with a joint venture bank project in Hungary. And when I went off to Moscow to open the Russian market for Daewoo, and resistance was even greater outside the company. Banks and the government were greatly concerned, but I count differently. I confirm the possibilities and then quickly work on whatever can turn those possibilities into reality, the type of business, the people, technology, money, machinery, and other requirements. People who come up with "it may not work," or "what are we going to do if it fails?" do not have the credentials to be businessmen. If there is only a 1% chance of success, a true business person sees that 1% as the spark to light a fire. The business world is not one where you put 1 and 1 together to get 2, but where you see 1 turning into 10 and 10 turning into 50. That is how you have to count. A decade ago, we built a tire plant in Sudan. This was the first plant ever built internationally by a Korean firm. And a lot of people had their reservations because Daewoo had never even dealt in the tire business. But I began by counting the possibilities. What possibilities? Although Sudan had a market for tires, it had no plant and was losing foreign exchange by importing expensive foreign tires. So I figured the Sudanese would welcome such a project. Sudan is 80% desert, and cities are quite far from one another, thereby increasing the demand for ground transportation. Also, I received information from a reliable American source that a huge oil field had been discovered in the southern country. Such an oil field would greatly bolster economic development, and the demand for cars and trucks would rise proportionately with economic development. For each additional vehicle, there would be demand for at least 5 tires. And tires wear out much faster in the hot desert than they do in more moderate climates. That was how I viewed the market. And things have turned out as I calculated. The tire plant is busier than ever now. The plant has undergone a number of expansions, but demand is so great for our tires that now people even pay in advance. Right from the start, you should be optimistic about whatever you do. But there is one thing that is possibilities into reality, and that is dedication, as you must have a philosophy of life. People often think of something lofty and difficult when they hear the term philosophy, but a living philosophy is not so difficult. No matter what you do, dedicate yourself to it. And if you can dedicate yourself to the benefit of society, that is enough.